The site is still an active crime scene, but most residents say they have nowhere to go and they are now collecting materials to rebuild. Their dwellings were razed to ashes as most were not brick and mortar buildings. 3 people, including a child, have been confirmed dead. The mother of the child is distraught. Multiple explosions of what is believed to be gas cylinders were heard as the flames forcefully engulfed the area. Residents say they've lost everything.
I've got nothing.
Tshwane Emergency Services personnel say they were alerted to the fire after 8 o'clock on Saturday night.
We extinguished that fire immediately, but we find that 300 shacks has been burnt out. And we start with our rescue search, and we discovered 3 bodies in our rescue search. And it was 1 adult female, 1 adult male, and a 1 child, 5-year-old girl.
Motola says they're satisfied that the fire has been completely put out. Residents are being assisted with food. The area has over the years been plagued by fires. Poor shack demarcations are believed to be the reason why so many shacks are affected, as they are built close to one another. Motola says an assessment is underway to determine the exact cause of the fire. SABC News, Pretoria.
Welcome back. All right, we take you back to this leading story today, of course, coming out of Cemetery Informal Settlement, where 300 shacks, we believe, have been burnt, lives lost as well, one of them being that of a 5-year-old boy. Our reporter, Ofentse Setimo, is keeping a close eye on that story for us. He joins us now. Ofentse, a good morning to you. I mean, what is the cleanup operations looking like this morning there?
Thank you very much, Naledi. Well, I can tell you that the site where we are right now actually resembles a construction site, you know, as a lot of residents of this particular area, that is Cemetery View Informal Settlement, are starting to rebuild their lives following the fire that engulfed over 300 shacks, as you rightfully mentioned in your intro there. If I can just get out of short briefly, just to show you what is exactly happening, you know, those shacks that you mentioned that were actually burnt down are being rebuilt as we speak right now. You know, it's almost like a construction site, and there's just everyone helping each other to ensure that, you know, there will definitely be a shelter. As you know, there has been some predictions that there could be some adverse weather conditions later today, particularly this particular week. So you can imagine if the weather actually finds them like this, it can actually, you know, have a drastic impact on them. But I understand that, you know, there are some families that are actually grieving their loved ones, as 3 people, including a young boy, actually passed on following that particular fire that engulfed their shacks. And from what we heard as we were engaging with the people here on the ground, they're actually saying that there hasn't been any sort of support from, you know, the social development department or any of those departments that are actually, you know, tasked with the well-being of those that are vulnerable. Well, I'm going to try to speak to someone right now just to find out how this particular incident has actually affected them. Me ke lebohela na kwa hao ko pontlhalosetso re mollo wa satarata o le amile ya vele
yiwe kana tere le metse ntate he ba bang ha ba sa phela ba hlokofetse ka nnete o gamile ha bohloko ha rena letho ha rena sohle
ke utlwile ba bang ba tlhalosa gore diaparo tse ba di apereng ke tsona tsa bofelo tse ba nang le tsona ke thuso e feng e nkileng la ya amohela ho tswa ko puso kapa ho tswa ko di NGO tse farologaneng?
o jalo ntate le nna ke felletsa ke le tsena ha o so be le thuso re e tholang go fihlela ha jalo
mare ke molaetso mo feng o ka ratang go romela go batho ba ileng gore motlhomong ba kana le bokgoni ba go ka le thusa bebe ka di donation yalo
a shere ka kopa fela gore ka se ba nang le sona ba ka re thusa ntate re tla moela ka se ba ka re thusang ka sona
and then material o le agang ka ona o lo kry-a kae ka gore mekhukhu e file lore ka satertaga
like ntho tse ra di saga mo hlatheng re keta re patalla koloi ya ho di tlisa mo re reka di plastic ntho ngwe le ngwe ke mo tšheleteng ra e reka
ko mesebetsing le amehile yang ka gore le ka se tlwele diphatlo tsa lona mona le a mesebetsing
mesebetsing ka nnete ba sa itse re eme hanyane ntate re kgone gore re bone re thola thuso jwanya gore re lokise mekhukhu ya rona mo e bang ba re thusa le bona ba ko mmerekong wa rona ba kgona go thusa ka se ba nang le sona.
Well, it's one of the residents who's actually residing here in Cemetery View, actually saying that, she's appealing to good Samaritans to actually help with the little that they can. So, they've actually lost everything. She's saying that the clothes on her back are what she's left with. And some are actually saying that, they are in the country illegally following the fire, as their documents have now been charred by the fire. And they're also appealing that, the officials that are out there can come visit this particular area and see how they can sort of assist them in terms of avoiding unnecessary deportations, as they say that, they are in the country legally, but their documentations have actually bent out. At this stage, it's not yet clear what actually caused this particular fire, as investigations are still ongoing. We're going to try to engage with the police and the emergency services and the families that were unfortunately affected by losing loved ones following this particular fire, to try and find out how they are coping and the way forward following this particular fire. Of recent times, there has been a lot of fires that have actually engulfed informal settlements. As you can remember, in Atteridgeville, there were about 5 children that actually passed on just a couple of months back, after the 2 mothers actually left them to go and have a party at a tavern. And unfortunately, during the night when they were having that particular party, the fire engulfed about 6 or 7 shacks that were in one yard there in Lodium near Atteridgeville. So we're also going to try to engage officials to try and find out why it seems there is a certain spark in these particular incidents of fire, as to how they can actually be avoided. You know that whenever there's going to be adverse weather conditions, the emergency services of Tshwane, of Ekurhuleni and of Joburg, they always warn informal settlement dwellers not to leave their candles, not to leave their paraffin stove unattended, as during those times they get a lot of incidents where shacks actually burn down during the times when there's heavy rains or it's just cold. When people are trying to heat up or trying to light their shacks, that's when some of these incidents happen. So we'll try to speak to some of the experts in that department to try and find out how this particular incidents can actually be averted.
Ofentse, I think when you hear the numbers of just how massive this devastation is, we're talking about 2,000 people that essentially have been left homeless as a result, 300 shacks. I mean, one can only imagine just the scale of the damage that can be seen at Cemetery Informal Settlement. I mean, are you able in some way to show us just how extensive that damage actually is?
Absolutely, we are able to show you, but unfortunately, we are shooting against the sun, so it might look a bit of a silhouette kind of a look, but my colleague will actually try and just to show you what is actually transpiring here. As I mentioned in the intro initially, that it resembles a construction site. You can actually hear the hammer just ramming onto the poles, as they are busy trying to re-establish those shacks that were engulfed by the fire. There's no sign of any of the officials here. It's only just the residents who are currently just, trying to rebuild their lives and trying to, salvage whatever that might have been left behind, that might have not burnt down. But, some shacks here are completely engulfed, to a point where they have to find new materials in order to rebuild their shacks. As the lady I was speaking to actually alluded, they're actually getting the sticks from a bush that is just behind. They're chopping those trees down. down to use as the wood that would actually be the supporting structure for their shacks. As I mentioned, we will try and find out what interventions are going to be there to try and assist some of the people that are here. As I mentioned, that the situation is so dire to an extent where some will not be able to continue living their lives as their identity documents are not there, and some are actually not South Africans, so they have to a certain extent be assisted with temporary documents that will definitely legitimize their stay in this particular country. Definitely is devastating what we are seeing. It's too many shacks that have actually come down. But when we were engaging previously with some of the officials, they did mention that they want to try and engage some of these informal settlement dwellers to say that they need to create space among the shacks, because the shacks are all crowded among each other, and once one catches a fire, it's so easy for the fire to spread to other shacks, as there's not enough space among the shacks themselves, so the fire is easy to actually spread to other areas. As you can see, it's spread quite easily here, engulfing about 300 shacks and actually claiming the lives of 3 people, including a young child.
Yeah, it certainly looks like it is community members themselves doing a lot of the cleanup. I mean, let's talk about what assistance they're getting. I know that a little bit later on we are expecting to speak to Gift of the Givers to talk about how they are helping those families that are devastated by that fire in Cemetery Informal Settlement. But from an authority's point of view, I mean, how much of a presence are you seeing there?
Well, at this present moment, I can tell you that there's no presence of any officials, whether from social development, whether from the human settlements, or whether from provincial, because sometimes the municipality itself are the ones that would respond to some of these emergencies because of their proximity. But since then, no, there has not been anyone from any department to come and try and give some sort of support to the people that are on the ground. Since this morning, we've been here, I believe, for the past hour, and we have not seen any of the officials. So on previous occasions, the Tshwane MMC for human settlement would actually be coming here to try and see how they can actually assist, the guys to rebuild their lives. But at this particular juncture, we have not seen anyone from the government to try and, give support to the people that are here.
Yeah, well, we're going to stay with that story because it's so important and keep our viewers updated. But Ofentse, thank you so much for that one. Ofentse Setimo, our reporter there at the Cemetery Informal Settlement, where that fire gutted 300 shacks, leaving 2,000 people homeless. And many of them, as you can see, they're really trying to rebuild.